sets it a little bit to the left. 11 yards shy of the record. Williams breaks the hole. Williams had a record book. Ricky Williams runs to the Hall of Fame. Touchdown. Ricky Williams, touchdown.
Young from the shotgun. Back to throw. Stance look. Under pressure. He'll tuck it in one. Vince to the 5. Young. Touchdown Texas. Touchdown Vince Young. He's done it again. Vince Young has given the Longhorns the lead with 19 seconds to play in the game.
Longhorn Nation, we're back.
Hello and welcome into another edition of the Lone Star Lowdown podcast brought to you by Texas Longhorns on SI. My name is Matt Galatzan and I will be your host. And today I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Zach Dimmitt, who is our deputy editor over there at Texas Longhorns on SI. Zach, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. We've got a few things to cover today, so it should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, let's just come right off from the top ropes. Texas has a pretty big visit recently with a defensive tackle. They already got Levon Johnson earlier this week in kind of a controversial way, I guess. It was a very interesting way with him signing with North Carolina, and confusing is a better word probably for that. Yeah, him signing with North Carolina and then flipping over to Texas, but now they're going to have Murad Watson out of Syracuse on campus, freshman All-American over there at Syracuse. And, this is a big deal because not only is it another defensive tackle in a room of need, but they are a finalist for a guy who's going to have 3 years of eligibility left, and a guy who has proven that he can do it in a power conference and be effective and play a lot of snaps early on in his career, which is something they're going to need because if they do land him, then he'll be right at the front of the rotation next year regardless, because the other 3 defensive tackles that they signed with Hero Kanu, or 4 defensive tackles now with Hero Kanu, Levon Johnson, Travis Shaw, and Cole Brevard are all on the other end of the spectrum. They're seniors and they're going to be 1-year rentals. So, landing a talented guy like Murad Watson is a big deal if they can do it. And according to reports, they are the finalists right now with Ohio State, according to Pete Nakos of On3. So, Zach, why don't you tell us about this a little bit and give us your impressions on this Murad Watson visit and what it could mean going forward?
Yeah, it's a big deal that they're able to get him on campus because it's not guaranteed that you'll land a commitment if you get the guy on campus. It's also, you could also land a commitment by not securing a visit. But the fact that they have him in Austin, as everyone says, you don't want to make him leave without landing that commitment. So this would be a big deal. I mean, he only played 1 season last year as a freshman, so still really raw prospect, super young still. And on 24/7 Sports transfer rankings, he's number 2. Right now, he's a 4-star transfer, despite being a 3-star high school recruit. So this guy has a lot of potential. Clearly, 6'3", 313 pounds, super big. And the fact that he's a New Jersey native and Texas is and Ohio State are both doing enough to convince him to be able to move far away from Syracuse, from his home state of New York. So. Either way, it seems like he's probably going to be in Columbus week 1, whether that's going to be with Texas or with Ohio State. So that remains to be seen, but definitely would be a huge get for Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, and you just kind of look at his measurables and his size, and that he's going to be able to help Texas and stop the run and do those kinds of things. But if you dive a little deeper into his Pro Football Focus numbers, last year he had a overall grade of a 65.1 and a run defense grade of 77.4, which is very solid. This guy is really effective against the run. He's the kind of defensive tackle that they really, have coveted in the portal over the last couple of years. Last year it was Bill Norton and Jermaine Lelay and Tia Savea, and now they're bringing in potentially 5 guys if they can land him. Plus they'll have Justice Terry and Alex January and Melvin Hills in there. And, that's already potentially 8 deep at the position. And then you take into account the other freshmen like Josiah Sharma and Myron Charles. It's beginning to look like a very deep room. It gives the opportunity it would give the opportunity for Charles and Sharma and even Terry to a certain extent to kind of sit back and develop and let these other guys, kind of take the forefront and the brunt of the reps and really come in with their experience and make a difference. But there's still a long way to go on this recruitment, I guess you could call it a recruitment. It's transfer portal, so technically it's a recruitment. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Oh,
I don't really know how to, differentiate it, but it's essentially a recruitment. But even if they don't land him, there's still a very healthy 5 or 6 deep at the position with the other transfers and with Justice Terry and Alex January. And that's kind of what you want at the position, I think, because they're going to want to rotate a lot early like they did last season so that they can keep these guys fresh and keep these guys ready to go. You don't want to burn any of these guys out too early against, especially when you got some tough ones early with Ohio State. You got Florida before the Texas OU game. You want these guys to be able to go potentially 16, 17 game season and not get too worn out. And if you got a 6-man rotation there, you could eventually probably whittle it down a little bit once you get into crunch time, maybe in the college football playoff. But even then, you feel pretty good about having 6 guys that you can put in there that will, thrive in different scenarios, because all of them are a little bit different. Travis Shaw and Cole Brevard will do different things than Levon Johnson and Hero Kanu and Justice Terry and Alex January. So it would give them a very versatile group. It would give them a very effective group, veteran group that can teach, younger guys like a Justice Terry, whose ceiling is just absolutely through the roof. But we're still waiting to hear what's going to happen there. He's got to go through his visits. He's still, Texas is still going to have to battle with Ohio State here. So it's not a sure thing. Ohio State has some very intriguing, pitches of their own that they're going to try and throw at this kid, but it would certainly be a big win for Texas.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the depth is super important because that's kind of the whole reason behind, and multiple reasons, but the reason behind not having a spring game this year is to keep these guys fresh, because the expectation is that Texas, the Longhorns expect that they'll be playing for national championship this year, or at least getting close. So you're talking almost 15 games again to get to that point, and so you can't be having some of your starters on the D-line getting nicked up when you're playing some of these non-con games. Obviously for Ohio State, that's a different story, but and like you mentioned, Florida is the first SEC game in the Swamp. That's arguably, depending on how Ohio State looks, that's arguably Texas's toughest game this season against at Florida. And you could argue Georgia as well. We'll see how things play out. You never know. But keeping them fresh is a big deal, and being able to add another body on that line with the potential like Watson would be a major deal. And it'd be a double whammy, not only landing him, but then stealing him away from Ohio State and not having to face him week 1 would be pretty nice, I would say, for Steve Sarkisian and PK. So we'll see what happens. And things are looking good that he's on campus, but you just never know how it plays out.
Yeah, and then speaking of stealing away, that was actually a really good segue. I'm proud of myself.
It was nice job.
Yeah, speaking of stealing away, Texas A&M just hired former Texas Longhorns assistant Frank Haith. I'm going to let you take the reins on this one, because I don't know too much about Frank Haith and how he fit into the Longhorn staff before Sean Miller got there and all that stuff. But why don't you tell us about that and how it's going to affect Texas A&M and what Texas has going on there?
Yeah, well, so obviously Texas A&M hired Bucky McMillan, their head coach. Kind of an unknown name to some, to the casual fan, but definitely one of the hottest names in the coaching circle leading up to his hire. Really good offensive mind, and he adds a good offensive mind with Frank Haith, who was Rodney Terry's top assistant the past 2 seasons. He had originally came to Texas when RT was hired after that Elite 8 run. And RT Ryan Terry is more of a defensive-minded coach, where Frank Haith was more responsible with drawing up offensive sets and out-of-bounds plays and stuff like that. And that was a question mark last season with Texas, was the offense. There was never a question necessarily about sometimes defense, but the defense and hustle was, typically there for the most part. But it was the offense, offensive execution that was lacking, and that's one of the reasons that Texas was so inconsistent last season. But Frank Haith is still a great coach, and I think he'll complement McMillan really well. Two offensive-minded guys. And we've already seen A&M add a Mackenzie McBacco, elite Indiana transfer. So he'll have some weapons to work with over there in College Station. But yeah, no, Frank Haith, he was a big name before arriving to Texas. He had coached that a Missouri team in 2012 that was a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, but they got upset by Norfolk State, number 15 seed in the first round. But yeah, that year he won Big 12 Coach of the Year. It was AP National Coach of the Year. So this guy's no joke. So A&M definitely got a good one, and the way things are looking already with McMillan and the staff and the roster he's putting together, A&M could be a sneaky good team next season, despite all the changes they've gone through. So that'll be interesting to see him on the other sideline whenever I go to College Station next season for that game. So we'll see how it goes, but definitely interesting little rivalry storyline there.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime, you have an assistant like that joins your staff, it's a pretty big deal. Texas did a similar thing this past season. They brought in York Malagai. Why don't you talk about him a little bit and how he compares to, what they're losing in Frank Haith, and if there's, if he can make up for any of those losses, or if it's a completely different, type of fit.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. I think with Malagai, it's more of a recruiting based thing. I know that he was just with Sean Miller in Corpus Christi visiting 2026 forward Billy White III. Pretty intriguing prospect there. I know they're still going to continue going on the recruiting trail this offseason around the state and internationally. That's something that Sean Miller's emphasized. So with Malagai, I think it's obviously, great expertise on the court, but that recruiting edge that he provides is definitely a big deal. And he was just at Kansas State last year under Jerome Tang, and he was his top assistant. And they had their struggles, but overall, I think they recruited well. And so we'll see if he can if he can do the same thing here in Austin. And it's already gotten off to a good start in the portal, and we haven't really seen Miller and the staff make strides quite yet on the high school recruiting trail when it comes to commitments, but they made offers. They've been visiting guys, and so we'll see what happens there. And yeah, like I mentioned, the international prospects are definitely going to be in play as well. There hasn't been any official commitments on that front yet. You count like the Matas, the FAU center is international guy, but he was technically in the portal. But they're definitely going to be looking at international guys in a high school way, and those kind of guys sometimes have a leg up on some of these seniors in high school because they're already playing against older guys in Europe, and they're already and as Europe is very, very tough when it comes to basketball. You're playing against grown men. And so being able to recruit overseas is a big deal. And so I think the staff has shown that they're already going to make strides on that front.
Yeah, and Texas is you mentioned that they're going to be doing the international recruiting thing, and I believe that they're supposed to get a visit from an Italian wing. Is that correct?
I haven't seen anything official about a visit.
Or they're in his list of contenders is what I should say.
Yeah, there's a few teams that were targeting. I'm gonna make sure I pronounce this correctly. Elisi Asui, I believe is how you pronounce it. He's a 19-year-old Italian forward. On threes, Joe Tipton had reported that Texas is one of the teams that were showing interest in him. Nothing yet that I've seen or like heard about a visit. But Missouri, Wisconsin, Clemson were three of the other teams that were mentioned as having interest in him. And this guy's a really raw prospect. He only averaged like 3.5 points, 1.9 rebounds last season. Still lots of untapped potentially. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. I think if they do get an international guy, it's most likely going to be like a developmental sort of thing, because these guys are young and they have lots of room to grow still. And they would potentially, whoever it is, that would be joining a team that has a lot of veterans already. So, would be kind of not necessarily a red shirt, but definitely in a reserve role. And so we'll see what happens there. It's been a little bit quiet on the basketball front since they landed Lucina Traore. That was about like a week or so ago. It's been a little bit quiet, so maybe too quiet. We'll see what happens. They still have a few more moves to make, so inevitably there's going to be some things that are going to pop up here between now and obviously this fall. So late April last season is when they landed a lot of their commits. So we definitely could see a few more coming up soon. You never know when that's going to be, but it's pretty inevitable at this point. But yeah, definitely, it's been well documented that Sean Miller, wants to attack the international route. Part of his quote that he said here at his introductory press conference, he said it's going to be a combination of the transfer portal, recruiting the very best high school players, and having a great feel for international recruiting. And so, yeah, he's already sticking true to what he said, and it's just a matter of time of seeing if they can land an international recruit here soon.
Yeah, and then there's another one that they're also reportedly in pursuit of as well. Evan Boisder. He's French. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation. But last year in the French under-21 league, he had 24 points per game, 5.3 rebounds per game, 4.5 assists per game, shot 45% from the field, 33% from three, 70% from the free throw line. And he's super athletic. He can create with the ball. This is a guy that they could probably, he's 19 years old. This is a guy that they could probably, be a long-term fit at the point guard position if they can, manage to get him on campus and get a visit and sort of convince him to stick around. But at the end of the day, this is going to be a long-term project, I think, for Sean Miller. He's not worried about winning just right now. He wants to build for the future and make sure that this is going to be a team that contends for a long time and not one that has to, go restock from the transfer portal like they're going to buy a 12-pack of beer after a long weekend. So, he's playing the long game. He does want to, compete next year, but he's not going to do it at the expense of overextending themselves and not, building for the future. So you love to see that. Why don't we shift gears a little bit and go to the NFL draft? We got about probably 15 more minutes here that we're going to go before we get out of here. But Chad Reuter just released a 7-round mock draft, and we saw a lot of Texas Longhorns go in this draft. Let's kind of go through a little bit and just kind of run through the first round, and then we'll jump into where the Longhorns are. Obviously, the NFL draft starts on Thursday night with round 1, and the consensus is pretty much the same everywhere, right? It's Cam Ward number 1, and that's what he has here is Tennessee Titans going with Cam Ward, and then Travis Hunter to the Cleveland Browns and Abdul Carter to the New York Giants at number 3. Again, seems like a very chalk way for this thing to go. Yeah, because the more and more you hear about it, the more and more it seems like Shedeur Sanders is going to be in the 20s probably in terms of his draft position, maybe even later, depending on who you listen to here. But for the most part, those 3 spots seem to be the betting favorite and the chalk way to go. We'll see if that actually happens. People love quarterbacks. Owners want to put butts in seats. So, I feel like the Cleveland Browns or the New York Giants would sell a hell of a lot more tickets. Maybe not Cleveland, but definitely the Giants would sell a hell of a lot more tickets if they brought in Shador rather than Abdul Carter, even though Abdul Carter is probably going to be a better long-term play. But it'll be interesting to watch because I don't know, who's going to – there's always some surprises, so I don't know who's going to be surprised this year, but, it'll be interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah, before we get into the Longhorns on this draft, something that really stood out to me is that Ashton Genty jumps all the way up to number 4 overall to New England. That's really interesting there. And as it mentions right here, Mike Vrabel, former Titans coach, trying to maybe emulate some of that Derrick Henry that he had when he was in Tennessee. So number 4 for a running back. I don't know if a running back's gone that high since maybe Ezekiel Elliott in 2015. To the Dallas Cowboys. I honestly, I don't know. I'm not sure. That's just my off the top of my head. Yeah, for Genty to go at number 4, that would be pretty insane. I mean, he's definitely deserving. But as we've seen in the past, running backs are a little bit more undervalued when it comes to draft stock. So, but when it comes to actually the Longhorns in here, the first Longhorn off the board is Matthew Golden at number 12 to the Dallas Cowboys. As we're both Cowboys fans, so we wouldn't mind seeing that. Matthew Golden playing at AT&T Stadium. But definitely interesting that he goes before McMillan, who isn't off the board in this draft, in this mock, until number 18 to Seattle. A lot of people think that McMillan could potentially pass him up as the first receiver taken. I personally don't see it. Maybe that's a little bit of Texas bias, but we'll see a little bit. But then Jahdae Barron, I don't really agree with the whole projected trades in these mocks. There's no way to project any of that stuff. But anyways, the Miami Dolphins are projected to make a trade and select Jahdae Barron, number 14. That'd be really interesting there. He'd, potentially be going up against Tyreek Hill in practices. And so already a veteran guy, technically as a rookie, now is going to be having to go up against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in practice. And so he'll definitely be ready for the season, that's for sure. And then just to close out this first round, got Kelvin Banks, number 16 to Arizona. Protection for Kyler Murray, hopefully in the long term. Cardinals kind of had an up and down season last year. Can't really afford to miss the playoffs again. Or there's definitely going to be questions about Kyler Murray as the future quarterback for Arizona. So having Kelvin Banks protect his left side, his blind side, could definitely be big. And then let's see, any more Longhorns on the first round?
I don't think there's any more in the first round. The thing about Kyler Murray is, for one thing, he probably needs to stop playing Call of Duty and start watching film, which would be a big help for the Cardinals there. But I think that's a great fit for Kelvin. I think that he has an opportunity to be part of a really good young core with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray there, so that would be a good fit.
And Cam Williams as well, former Longhorn.
Yeah. And I don't love the fit in Miami for Jahdae Barron, only because I would prefer him to be able to go somewhere where he doesn't have to be the number 1 corner. And it sounds like they're going to move on from Jalen Ramsey.
Right.
I would like for him to be able to move to kind of gradually work his way into that role instead of having that burden placed on him as a freshman. That's kind of nitpicky because he's going to, he's going to accept that challenge and he's not going to back down from it and he'll be just fine. But I do like watching Miami because they have one of the more exciting offenses in the NFL. So it'd be fun to have Jahdae in there. And then the thing about Matthew Golden to the Cowboys is it's almost too good to be true, right?
Right.
He's exactly what they need. He fits everything in their offense that they want to do. He's a great complement to CeeDee Lamb. I'm not going to say he's a perfect fit because I don't believe in the idea of a perfect fit anywhere unless it's, Michael Jordan or, Michael Irvin with Troy. Like, you got to earn that title of perfect fit, right? But he's about as close as you're going to get in this draft to being exactly what they're looking for in a wide receiver. And yet you keep hearing that they're connected to Tet McMillan as well, which I understand. I mean, he's probably Mike Evans 2.0, huge big body guy, can help him in the red zone, really good with making contested catches and all that stuff. he doesn't have this, like, they have two totally different skill sets. So, no matter which way the Cowboys decide to go, they're going to get a great receiver. I would prefer they go with Golden as a Cowboys fan and as a guy who covered Golden last season. I think he's a great kid. I think he's obviously super confident because he said that he could probably run a 4.1 40 and break Xavier Worthy's record and I guess almost every NFL combine record ever with that 40 time. But you kind of love to see that. And we'll see what happens. I think that they could go either way and they'll be just fine. I think Golden's probably a better fit for the offense overall, but both of them are tremendous players. Let's move on to the second round now.
And I do want to correct myself really quick. I had said Cam Williams is on the Cardinals. Obviously, I meant Christian Jones. Williams.
Yes. Cam Williams is
not on the team yet, so I'm going to correct myself there. But go ahead.
Yeah, let's move on to the second round. First off, you have Alfred Collins going to the New York Jets at number 45, which I think is an interesting fit. I think this is about right in terms of his draft position. Going kind of early there, early to mid second round. I think that's probably his sweet spot there in the draft. I think the Jets are an interesting fit because they just hired Aaron Glenn, and they are going to be. It seems like they're going to be more of a defensive minded team. I believe Edholm has them picking, Chad Reuter has them picking offensive line here, but in the first round. But they're trying to build out those, both of those interiors, and they're trying to, solidify the defensive line. They're solidifying the offensive line. This is a great way to do that with the number 45 pick, and then probably my favorite pick in this entire mock draft for any of the Texas Longhorns is Quinn Ewers to Seattle at number 52. He's not going to, if this comes through, he's not going to have to, go in there and start right away. He'll be able to sit behind Sam Darnold until Sam Darnold turns back into his normal Sam Darnold instead of the Minnesota Sam Darnold. So he'll have at least a few games to kind of get ready and learn there. But, I think that's a really good long-term fit for him. They have good players at the skill positions. They have a good running game, and they're kind of an up-and-coming team. And I think this is where, this is where Quinn's sweet spot is. I know I've seen a lot of mock drafts where he's, sort of slipped, and there's some ridiculous ones that have him falling all the way into the 6th or 7th round, and there's some that have him in the 3rd round. But I think that, the more that people go through the pre-draft process and they scout him and they see what he's actually capable of when he's healthy, they're going to that tune is obviously starting to change. And you saw a lot of that on the John Gruden special last night with his Gruden QB.
That was awesome.
Whatever he calls it. Yeah, that was great. It really did a great job of emphasizing Quinn's skill set and his knowledge of the game and his personality and all of the different things that a lot of people don't really get a chance to see when you're just seeing a guy sit there in an interview or do all those kinds of things from a fan perspective. So I would encourage everybody to go watch that. It's on Barstool's YouTube or something. And I'm sure they've got it on their Twitter page as well. It was really well done. Then to wrap up the second round, you had Jaden Blue to the Chargers at number 55. Again, I think this is a pretty good fit. They already have Najee Harris there, so he's not going to have to be a feature back or anything like that. But he can be sort of a change of pace guy, the lightning to Najee Harris's thunder. He can catch balls out of the backfield from Justin Herbert. And, we know Jim Harbaugh knows how to use running back, so I think that's a good fit for him.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the fact that Jaden Blue is in the 2nd round right here says a lot about where he's come in just a few seasons. I mean, who would have thought he would have been a 2nd round pick just a few years ago? And the fact that he's gone all the way up here despite the fumbling issues last season, because that could have definitely hurt his draft stock. He could have given up and transferred after losing the starting job in season, like we've seen with people before at other programs. But he stuck around and he stayed the course, and it's paying off for him. And if he were to go to 2nd round, being able to go to the Chargers, move to LA, join obviously former Texas kicker Cameron Dicker there in LA, That'd be awesome for him. And so, and then with Quinn to Seattle, joining a pretty crowded quarterback room, obviously, like you mentioned with Sam Darnold, and then I think they're trying to look to trade Sam Howell, according to reports from a few days ago. And Sam Howell has definitely had his struggles over the past few seasons. So, yeah, and then I believe that Seattle also just brought back Drew Lock. So Quinn has some veterans to learn under, but he also could potentially get his chance to get some reps. Next season. So you never know what will happen there. Injuries happen, and so we'll see how that goes. But I can move to the third round. If you'd like.
Why don't we run through the rest of the third round and then the fourth round, and we'll just finish it out because we're running short on time here.
Yeah. Let's see where are these Longhorns at. I see Danny Stutzman. Longhorn favorite there.
Okay, so there's no Longhorns in the third round. I found a summary of it.
You got the list.
Yeah, we published a story about it this morning that I forgot existed.
Oh, that's
right. Everybody go check it out on Texas Longhorns on SI. So there's the no Longhorns in the third round, but they come back strong the next day with 5 more players taken. So you have Cam Williams going number 106 in the fourth round to the Patriots. You have Gunnar Helm going to the Dolphins at number 117 and joining Jahdae Barron there. You have Andrew Makuba going to the Giants at number 154 in the fifth round. And then the sixth round, you have Vernon Broughton going to the Raiders at 180, Barron Sorrell going to the Rams at 190, and Jake Majors going in the sixth round to the Bengals at number 193. Obviously, that leaves a couple players off that could potentially still get drafted. That's still a school record, 12 players for Texas there. So, still a great haul, and a record year for Sarkisian. But we don't know what's going to happen with Isaiah Bond. Odds are he'll probably go undrafted based on the details that keep coming out about his situation. Which, if we're not going to get too much into that, but you can see why NFL teams would stay away there. David Benda would have a chance to be a late round pick, maybe 7th round. I'm surprised Hayden Connor's not in this draft. He has a chance to go anywhere from the 5th to 7th round. And, there could be a guy like Bill Norton or something like that who kind of sneaks in and gets in the back half of the 7th round just because he's an absolute mountain and a beast of a man. So, somebody could take a flyer on him. But, overall 12 players drafted, really great haul for the Longhorns there. I think my favorite pick out of that group is probably Gunnar Helm to the Dolphins, just because that's such an exciting offense.
Oh yeah.
They really know how to get the ball out to his hands quick because they don't want him to get his 17th concussion. So they're going to get the ball to Tyreek Hill. They're going to get the ball to Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki and all those guys. And Gunnar Helm could fit in quite nicely there because we know what he can do and what he did with Quinn Ewers of the Texas offense.
Yeah, no, definitely. A few notes really quick. I think it's good to see former Longhorn receiver Isaiah Nair going in the 4th round here to the Saints. He has injury issues, obviously, when he was in Austin, but that'd be great to see him land somewhat close to Texas, but going to New Orleans. It didn't work out in Austin, but he made up for it, and had a great end to his college career at Nebraska. So, and then another guy who potentially could go undrafted, who I think could still end up finding a solid role for himself next season, is Silas Bolden. I know after the pro day, he was talking to us, and he was saying how teams have talked to him about his special teams abilities, not just his receiving ability. So he could find some value there as potential returner. If he does, he'll definitely sign an undrafted deal if he doesn't go drafted. I mean, I think that's pretty certain. But he may not get tons of looks as a receiver as a rookie, but you never know. He could be one of those guys that breaks open a kickoff or punt return touchdown, as we saw last season. And so, but even with the special teams abilities, he still has shown that he is a tough receiver, despite his smaller size. He has a great mindset, and I think NFL teams like that. And so, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he is a late round pick. But definitely should find himself on a 53-man roster as an undrafted guy at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, if Kevontae Turpin can do it with the Cowboys, then certainly Silas Bolden can do it. And there's places like that in the NFL for these kinds of guys, and they're a little bit few and far between, but they are out there. Another guy who I think can potentially make a practice squad is Mo Blackwell, just because he's an absolute athlete, and he could be a special teams guy that teams bring on to be like a special teams demon. And those spots are not the most highly publicized and those kinds of things, but they're critical to an NFL team's success. So Mo Blackwell can kind of carve out a career, or at least start his career in that kind of vein. But we'll see what happens there. And then there's also the potential of other guys signing an undrafted free agent deal or something like that, like a Jermaine Lole.
I think Gavin Holmes is also another guy potentially. Yeah. He had a really good pro day. I know he wasn't the most flashy guy during his time at Texas. He made a few nice plays down the stretch of this past season, but he's a veteran guy. Had really good numbers of the pro day. I know he definitely impressed some of those scouts. So look, he's another name to watch for sure.
Yeah, and but like we said, it could be anywhere between 12 to 15 guys, potentially even 16 drafted for Texas, depending on what happens with Isaiah Bond. And if they can get 16 guys drafted, that'll be the most from any school ever in a single draft. So that would be an excellent recruiting tool for Steve Sarkisian, to say the least. But why don't we wrap it up there? Zach and I have to go get back to work and do a few things. So we'll hit you back tomorrow. But that's going to do it for another episode of the Lone Star Lowdown podcast. You can listen to us pretty much every major platform out there, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Pocket Casts, or any of your favorite podcast platforms. We're making our way into those pretty quick. So subscribe to us on your favorite. And we're also live on X, Facebook, YouTube, and every day from 10 a.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday is when we're generally going to do this. But we were on a little early today, like you're seeing here. So it'll be in the morning. We'll say that. And then you can and don't forget to check us out on Texas Longhorns on SI for all your latest news and notes regarding Longhorn sports. If you enjoyed the podcast here today, please make sure to hit the like button and the sub button on your favorite platform, and do it right now. But most importantly, be sure to tell somebody you love them, and we will see you next time.
Fight.